Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review for David Fincher's Zodiac. That's right, continuing my series of David Fincher reviews. And this one for me is the big one. This is probably my favourite David Fincher film. Just to completely, give the game away right off the bat. There's a few more of his that I still need to re-watch that have been a long time since I've watched them. And opinions can change over the years as you mature and various things like that. But yeah, this film for me, so it's about the Zodiac Killer, for anyone who doesn't know, obviously with that title, which is a real life murder case that took place, several murders in fact, of a guy who killed people and taunted the press, taunted the police with notes, cryptic notes that he sent to them, and was never caught. And this happened across the 70s, very late 60s and across the 70s. And yeah, it lasted for 30 years without him being caught. And the case still remains open. David Fincher, obviously a man with a reputation for detail, definitely brings that detail here. And it's what makes this film so gripping. Now, every time I come to this film, I usually watch this every couple of years, and every time I come to it, I expect that this will be the time when, I know what's going to happen, so the film probably is going to lose a bit of impact, and I get a bit bored with it. I'll be checking my watch or whatever, I want to go on my phone, whatever, but it just doesn't happen. I watched it again for this review. It was like, it's the first time in a couple of years. I was about due for a watch, and I watched it, and yet again, I'm gripped from start to finish. This is one of those movies that is very heavy on detail. It's quite heavy on exposition. It's a lot of characters talking about the details of the case. It's a brilliant script by James Vanderbilt, it must be said. I know that Fincher gets a lot of the credit for the detail and stuff, but it is all there in the script. This is a Hollywood movie, we can't gloss over that fact. There are certain things about the real life cases that have been changed or added or whatever, just for the sake of dramatic effect. But when it comes to the specific murders that are shown, the details are very, very close to the actual cases. Like, for example, the first murders are not shown in, so there's 7 confirmed attempted kills, attacks, so to speak. 4 attacks with 7 people involved. And the first attack involving 2 people isn't actually shown. They have only the evidence, the forensic evidence, but no one who can confirm or deny what actually happened, how it played out. And because of that, they didn't shoot it. They didn't attempt to reconstruct that sequence, which for me is very respectful. I think it's the right way to go. I think if you're going to show this stuff, then it needs to be done fairly to the victims. The victims, their blood cries out, essentially. They haven't had justice, and I think if you're going to show this stuff on camera, then it needs to be seen as it was. I know that a lot of people would argue it doesn't need to be seen at all, and I get that argument. And if you're in that camp, this ain't the film for you. Now, I do find this film to be a horror film. I know a lot of people would say it's a thriller, it's a detective thriller, and admittedly so it is. But for me, it is also a horror film. So there are 4 attacks that we get to see during this film, and each one of them is extremely horrific to me, and it's because it's real. Again, going back to that attention to detail that is paid, it's because they feel so real to me. It is just so horrific to think that these are things that happened. This is how they happened based on the eyewitness testimonies that we have. For example, the one by the lake, the murder by the lake, every time I watch it, and I still know what's coming, I've seen this film now about 5 times, and yet every time that scene comes on, it shocks me, it horrifies me. The coldness of it, the calculated nature of it. It is truly one of the most horrific scenes in any film, quite frankly, because of that realism. This being David Fincher, he shoots on a lot of wides, a lot of very still shots, so there's no like kind of fast cutting, in your face, close up kind of stuff to get in on the gory detail. It's like you're just stood there, you're watching, and it's almost like someone's got your head and they're forcing you to watch this thing. And it just, again, like I say, that camera work, the direction by Fincher just makes it all the more horrific. Whereas I think if you put this into the hands of, you know, the usual kind of horror director, then I think it probably wouldn't have the same effect. It would be glorified, and that would be the problem. That would be, to me, would be more disrespectful to the victims of these cases. As I say, every time I watch this film, I'm totally gripped, and it's the investigation, really. It's just the fact that all these different facts are laid out for us, and we can see everything that the police. I mean, I'm sure the real life police officers would argue against it because they lived this case. But you feel like you're going through everything that they went through. You feel invested in the time and the energy that they have put into this case, that they have sacrificed. Because all these men who are dealing with it, whether it's the reporters that are trying to figure out who the identity of this man is, or the police detectives who are following the evidence trails, they're all dealing with an obsession that is never going to be fulfilled. Obviously we know this is a case that is not truly solved. Now the film does put forward a very compelling argument as to who the killer is. Now, having not read the real life case evidence or anything, I don't know if this is one of those deals where actually a bit of smoke and mirrors going on, a bit too much has been added to make that case seem legit. But certainly the case that the film presents, if those facts are indeed facts, then yeah, it seems very likely that they now know who the killer is. It's so compelling, the journey to finding the identity of that man. This is a film about obsession and the things that are sacrificed in the pursuit of that obsession. We see Graysmith, the reporter who kind of put these books together based on all the evidence that he followed and whatnot, and the police officers that had gathered that evidence, particularly like one in particular played by Mark Ruffalo. And these are men who are obsessed with this case, and as a result of that, they are sacrificing certain aspects of their life. Now, you never really get to see much between the relationship of the police officer, Ruffalo's character, and his wife, but you do get a sense there that there is still strength in their marriage. They don't end up in divorce or anything like that, but you still get the sense that this case has taken its toll. Sacrifices he's had to make as a police officer are something that she too has to bear as his wife. And then we see Graysmith, obviously, he literally loses his wife in the process. It ends in divorce because it brings danger into his household. That's how obsessed he is. He cannot give it up. It does speak volumes to these kind of cases, which fascinate so many people, that there is something about them that really piques our obsession. We have to know. And there's a scene towards the end of the film which in which Robert Graysmith kind of comes face to face with the man he believes to be the killer. And this is something that he says to his wife earlier on in the film, that he has to know. He has to stand in front of this guy and look him in the eye. And it is that sense that, what are you going to find? When you come face to face with this man, what are you going to find? Are you going to find a monster with fangs and horns, or is it just going to be some schlubby looking dude, which is what we are faced with at the end of the day? And it just makes you think about how the true monsters are hidden in plain sight. They don't look like monsters. They could be anyone. And with this guy having escaped justice, having gotten away with his crimes, it does fill you with that kind of sense of dread that anyone you bump into in the street could very well be as twisted and demented as the Zodiac Killer. I feel like this film is also a commentary on the time, the period in which these events take place, and the tragedy that is the lack of interconnection between police forces. You know, if this case had happened today, the way that police forces now interact and are kind of integrated through computer systems and whatnot, I just don't think this man would have gotten away with it. There's a scene in this film when someone's trying to get some information. Ruffalo's character is trying to get information, and he's corresponding between these other two districts. And it's just ridiculous. I think it's actually Anthony Edwards' character, and it's ridiculous how nobody knows what the other is doing, because nothing's computerized at this point. They don't have a computer system in which they can go on and see what happened in this district. They've got to phone through. They've got to ask someone. That person has then got to be in the know to begin with. And if they are in the know and they can put their hands on the piece of evidence that they need, they've then got to send it to them. And you know, some of these districts, some of these police officers don't even have access to a fax machine. You know, the Edwards character, he's like, fax it to me. He's like, I can't. We don't have a fax yet, so they got to send it by post. And it's just like, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating to watch, you know, and obviously that's intentional. It's designed to get you as frustrated as these officers were when they were working the case. Just the fact that everything moves so slowly. You know, we see time jumps where events happen, and then next thing we get something on the bottom of the screen that says 1.5 months later, 4 months later, and it's just this really slow, laborious process of just what it was like to investigate something like this during the 70s, during a period when we didn't have the technology we have now that could allow the whole police force around the country to be integrated, interconnected. The film also takes a look at paranoia. You know, we see the character played by Robert Downey Jr., this reporter who kind of writes an article in which he assumes or makes assumptions that the Zodiac Killer must be homosexual, and he ends up receiving a letter from the Zodiac Killer, and it makes this guy lose the plot. You know, we see Downey Jr.'s character from that point on spiraling out of control, drinking, and by the time we get the last scene with him, he just looks like a wreck. He looks like a complete mess. The unknown killer that is out there, who could strike at any time, and the paranoia of that, it sends ripples through people's lives. And we see that paranoia, kind of how it could play out within society, on a societal level as well, as Graysmith refuses to let his son get on a bus. You know, he's going to drive him to school instead because the Zodiac has threatened to kill a school bus full of children. And it's just how one person can bring, you know, everyone to their knees, so to speak, through fear and paranoia. And through the media, think about the way that the media is used to catch killers. It's also used to instill the fear and paranoia that killers are trying to inflict upon society, you know, without the media kind of putting the Zodiac's messages out there, reporting about him, we wouldn't have had that paranoia. We wouldn't have had that fear. The performances in the film are all really on top form. Obviously, we've got a great cast here: Mark Ruffalo, Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal. Just like I say, Downey Jr. gives a really great performance of someone who's kind of spiraling out of control, losing the plot, and sinking into paranoia. Gyllenhaal gives a really great performance of somebody really like kind of diving deep into obsession to the point where he's kind of zoning out everything else in his life. And Ruffalo is just someone you kind of root for. You know, this is a guy who's spent so much of his life on this case, and even comes under attack at one point from the police force, from internal affairs, and it's just like you're rooting for him, you know. And even though you know that they never solved this case, or they certainly never arrested someone, it's like every time I watch it, I still want this guy to succeed. I still want him to get his man. I love it in films when directors take a piece of music which seems relatively kind of harmless and then match it up to something quite sinister, and it changes the whole tone of that song or whatever for all time. Hurdy-Gurdy Man by Donovan is used in this film over the first killing that we see, actually the second killing in the real life case, and it's just, yeah, that song now is forever changed for me. In much the same way that Stuck in the Middle with You is forever changed after seeing Reservoir Dogs. It's just, you can't hear that song now without thinking of this film, without thinking of those scenes, and it's just, yeah, it puts a new kind of horrific spin on it. Donovan's daughter, as it happens, does make an appearance in this film. So she plays one of the intended victims, but she has a baby with her, and again, like I say, it's such a horrific moment when they're in the car and he turns to her and says, "Before I kill you, I'm going to chuck your baby out the window." And it's just like, as a father, it just makes my skin crawl. And every time I watch that scene, I always forget that it's coming, to be honest. And it's only when I'm watching the film that I just realise how many moments of horror there are in it. But I love the sense of relief as well that comes when we later find her and she pulls the baby out from under the bush, and it's just, whew, you didn't go there. But yeah, I mean, like you say, based on real life events and eyewitness testimony, but it's horrific. Obviously, this is a film that has a very dark subject matter, can be quite oppressive at times, but thankfully Vanderbilt and Fincher find ways of injecting humour at appropriate moments, I would say, throughout the film. And it's usually during scenes in the newsroom between the reporters and whatnot, the kind of camaraderie between them, or the lack thereof in some cases. So yeah, it's not all heavy, but like I say, it doesn't mean it's going to be a non-stop party either. If you're looking for humour and whatnot, probably not the film to come to. But as I say, there are moments in there. I do think this is a film that rewards repeat viewings as well. There are little details that you miss. As I say, I mean, you could say that was a negative as well, just the fact that there is so much exposition, there is so much information being thrown at you, that you do miss things, I think, on first watch. So, like I say, this is a film that each time I watch it, it becomes a bit more solidified in my mind. I pick out details that previously didn't quite sink in as well for me. One in particular is when Graysmith goes to see this independent theatre owner. He wants to question him about this poster and a guy who used to work there. And that whole scene for me, when I first watched it, it played a little bit strangely, and it was primarily because I'd missed information in previous scenes about the handwriting on this poster, so it just kind of went over my head. And like I say, on repeat viewings, once I got the information and realised what that was all about, it made a lot more sense to me, and also kind of, again, played into those themes of paranoia and dread that are built up elsewhere in the film, just that anybody could be the killer, that these people with their obsessions running around all over town trying to find this man could very much put themselves in danger and stumble across the dude purely by chance, because nobody knows who he is. A great scene once you actually understand what's going on. And I think, if you're one of those people who loses the plot quite a bit when you're watching a movie, if you're not good with lots of information being thrown at you, then this probably won't be the film for you. If you are someone who likes that stuff, if you get caught up in it, if it's something that kind of grips you and grabs you like it does with me, where it just pulls you in and you want to know more and it just builds intrigue, then this is going to be the perfect film for you, because like I say, it is for me. I'm engrossed every time I watch it, even though I know what the outcome is. I'm just, it really intrigues me, just the facts of the case, the way that a case is built and put together, even though it can look pretty clear cut and yet still get no result. It's just, I find it all fascinating. I find the characters absolutely fascinating and gripping as well. So yeah, for me, this is a perfect film. It's a 5 out of 5, and like I say, may very well be David Fincher's best. There's going to be stiff competition from Fight Club, which I need to go back and rewatch and review. I will be doing that. Was my favourite film at one point, so we'll see how that fares. But yeah, Zodiac, 5 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Leave your comments below. Let me know. Thank you for watching this video. And until next time, crack it.